Oh, is the recording started? Yeah. Okay, so today we'll be working on like how do we install Kubernetes on a bare metal Ubuntu server, and how are the networking and how is the storage and all. We'll be discussing on those things. So first we'll start about the installation. So yeah. So here I'm using two nodes, one for the master and one for the worker node. So I'll be installing everything. So I'm just copied all the commands in the text pad so that it will be easy. So I think these steps already I covered in the Docker itself. So we need to install Docker as a runtime container. So I'm just installing those again. So I'm installing the Docker. We need to update these in both the servers. I mean, in how many nodes which we are planning, we need to install in everything. So here I'm taking my scenario. I'm taking two. One is master and another is worker node. So installing Docker. So I'm enabling the storage driver as overlay. Just restarting the Docker service. And the same need to perform in another server as well. So we have installed the Docker. And so we just installed all the required packages. Now we'll be installing the Kubernetes package. Here I'm taking the version as 1.21.2, which is a baseline standard version. So currently the 1.22 also is there, but I'm using this version for the demo. So I need to update the same steps in other server as well. Just run the update. Okay. So I'm installing the KubeADM, kubectl and kubelet. The same it goes to other server as well. And for the bare metal, I think we need to disable the swap, because with swap the Kubernetes does not work. So we need to disable it. And here now we'll be starting the master server. This is the kubeadm init command, which will initialize the master node. So it generates all the proxy certificates, etcd certificates, everything, and creates all the files, and it downloads all the images and start bringing up the master server, API server, etcd, everything it will be bringing up. And here we have taken is the pod network. This is the pod network CIDR 10.0.0. This is internal pod network which Kubernetes will be using this for the communication between the pods. Okay, so here is the output. So the master has been brought up. All the things have been online. We need to set the config file so that we can execute the kubectl command will use this file and connect to the API server. Yeah. And here you can see this is the command. So if at all when you want to add any worker nodes, so we need to run this command in the worker nodes so that it will be attached to the master server, configured to the master server. This is the token and this is a certificate. I'll just take a copy of this. I'll keep it here. So now if you see, yeah. So if you see, when you run the nodes, only master is available right now because we did not add any worker node. So we'll do the same we'll add the worker node. We'll be executing this in the worker node. Oops, sorry. The thing is, we need to execute with sudo. Yeah. So when we do a kubeadm join, it will with this token, it will ping the my API server, and it will configure all the kubelet and kubeproxy, everything in the worker node. So you'll get a message like this node has joined the cluster. Everything API request was sent and response was also received. And when we go to now, if you see, it says the node is ready. The master slave node is ready. Okay. If you can see, still the containers are getting created, Now we need to deploy a network configuration so that all the communication between the pods will happen. So for that we are in this example we are using Flannel. There are other networks also supported available, but right now we are using the Flannel one. So you can see the Flannel is initializing. So it will run a pod on each and every worker node, and it will configure the required networks and routes. So whenever we spin up any pods and everything, it will get its own IP, and those all networks will be maintained by this Flannel. We can see it's in a running mode. So this is how just we install it in bare metal, the simple simplified commands, not much. So everything I've just, I've added from all the commands, everything are there in the presentation. If you want to test, you can use these commands, the same commands, and do a testing. And remember, we need to remember one thing: we should not do kubeadm init on the worker nodes. It should be only done on the master nodes. And all the worker nodes only need to use join command to join it to the master. So coming to the networking, as I told, like we are using Flannel for the networks here. So these are the fundamental network rules. Like all containers within the pod should be able to communicate with each other, and they can communicate with other pods without NATing. So because they'll be having a separate dedicated network, internal network. So without NAT, they need to communicate. All the nodes can communicate with all the pods even without NATing. So if the IP that pods itself is the same IP but from other nodes also we are visible, it will be the same IP of the pod. And containers, like example, if we have any multi-container pods, there will be like multi-container pods and all. So they will be sharing the same IP when they are deployed into the same namespace. And intra-pod communication will be happening through the local host. And all the pod-to-pod communication will be through a unique cluster IP. So and like we discussed earlier in the last session, like kube-proxy is the one which maintains all the services whichever we deploy a pod. So it will be given a unique service name, and through service names it will be defined. And backend it assigns a unique cluster IP so that whenever the pod is new generated or redestroyed or created and recreated again, the IP might be changing, but the service name wasn't changed. So that is the reason kube-proxy maintains everything to that. And from the service, from the external to the service, we are using like ingress controllers or load balancers. We have like multiple ingress controllers like Nginx, or in AWS, they have their own AWS which will spin up load balancers. So when all the external service is handled by these things, kube-proxy. And coming to the core objects. Okay, so last time we discussed about the namespaces, like what are namespaces, how we define them. Namespaces, like it's only a partitioning the cluster and giving a unique what do you call segregating all the required applications into a separate namespace. Likewise, we can say like if you see here, all the kube systems, everything whichever we have deployed, all the master related everything has its own namespace called kube system. So if we deploy any other applications, or any other things, we'll be segregating it to a different namespaces so that there won't be, we can partition it accordingly. Like if at all we want to like a development environment, we can create a namespace like with dev, or if you want to like a QA, we can partition it like a QA. If at all we want a prod, we can partition it like a prod. So for segregating all these purposes, we are using this. You can just, this is the YAML file syntax for creating a namespace, or you can just create a namespace even with the command line. Create namespace development. Okay. Yeah. Here you can see, if you type in a namespace, it will show. And here we can also add labels to them, like okay, here I have deployed it with the namespaces. Okay, so here you can see in the example, we have attached a label called name development. And if you see, we can, with these labels, we can add each and every namespace, we can segregate. These can be used in the applications, like we can do the label links to the application and they'll be used to segregate it. And coming to pods, pods are the smallest deployable units in the computing, which will be managed by the Kubernetes. A pod is like it's a group of one of the more containers where we can share storage, network resources, and we can specify like how they can run, and how all the pods contents, like always they are co-located and co-scheduled and run in a shared context. Here I'll be showing like the pod example. This is an example of a Nginx, like how this is the API version, how we define, and it's a metadata. This is the kind is a, I mean, there are, when we deploy, when we construct a YAML file, so there are different things. Like if it is a, it defines like this is what, this is a pod, and there are kind is like a deployment, kind is a service. I'll explain the next slides. So here the kind is a pod, and this is a metadata name, and here we are having the labels, and this is a specification, what it is, specification label Nginx, and here it is subspecification is the containers, and here we are specifying the image, whether it is a Nginx image or depending on the pod type we can specify, and the pod and the ports. Here you can see the attributes. The name is the name of the container. So whenever we deploy, it will take the same name as the container. And image is what we define, the Docker image, whether it is Nginx and the version. Here we are taking like a stable and Alpine. It could be like 1.6 or 1.7, whatever the version it is. And the ports we define here, like what the container port need to be exported. So for Nginx, we are exposing 80 port, and probably like depending like for MySQL 3306 and so on, depending on the image size. And we have a call option called env, where if at all you want to pass on some variables. Likewise, we saw in the Docker, we passed like username, password for the MySQL. The same way for the pod or for the pod containers also, we give options called env and expose them. And the command is like, if at all you build a container image and you want to override any entry point, you can use this option and you can override the entry point. Or if not, then it will take the default entry point which you have specified in the Docker file while building the application, while building the Docker image. So that will be used, or you can use this for to override those things. Okay. And here's a pod template, like how the controllers manage and how the specs it's limited to metadata, and how the controllers use pod templates to make actual pods. Same which I explained. The name metadata is a name, and the specification template metadata labels. Here is what we are mentioning: the labels and the containers, image, everything. And coming to the labels, which I already told you, like it's like just nothing but key value pairs that are used to identify. Like example, application is Nginx, application label app name is Apache, or app is Nginx, or app is MySQL, like this, like how we mention here. This is how the labels, you can see the example here. So for the web container, here we are mentioning like we are doing a label called app is Nginx. Okay. And we also have an option called selectors, where we can specify, like example, the node selector, which I am doing here. If at all I want if at all I have like multiple nodes here right now we have only one node, but if at all we have multiple nodes and you want particular application go into a specific worker node. Okay, here we have only one, and if at all we have like 3, 4, 5, 6, and you want only the particular application, the pod should run into that particular worker node. So there, in that cases, we can select like node selector, and give the name, like whatever the labels you give, you can use those options. And when you deploy like that, so it will the API server will verify that labels, and it will push to the particular node. So like this, we have many other selectors. I'll explain more in the next sessions, like what all selectors we can use. This is what the same explanation, like equality based selectors allow like match labels. If the GPU is NVIDIA, then operator is in or operator is out, or not in exist. These are the based selector types and filterings. With these selectors, we can select and deploy the pods, choosing it. If at all the value is like, if it is not NVIDIA, if you are selecting expressions, if you are giving some other expression, and if it does not match the values, then it will not deploy into that in particular thing. So it will go into the another one. So these are default options like in, not in, and exist. And the services. So whenever we deploy, like we expose, it's kinds of like deployment, service. Deployment is nothing but we just start the application in a container, and it is exposed through the service. And those service like kube-proxy maintains all those service, and each and every service, they get the cluster IP or the load balancer IP or a node port, which there are options for that. And that behind the DNS is maintained in the namespace like this. This is the format. It's like service name dot namespace dot svc dot cluster dot local. It is the internal DNS namespace, internal DNS which the Kubernetes server maintains. If at all you want to have like service to service calls, example, if you take any API which has another API calls, so instead of going to external, we can just call them via service name. Suppose I have a test API dot dev. I have deployed one test API in a dev namespace, and I am having another test API one in a QA namespace. So if at all I want to interact with that namespace which is available in dev namespace, so just simply we can just use internal calls like test dot dev namespace. So instead of going the request going to external world and coming back to the load balancer and cluster, we can just do the internal calls using this particular DNS names. And so that's what this kube-proxy is used for doing all the internal load balancing, everything. And our external load balancing, everything is through the ingress. And it maintains all the host IP address, everything, all maintains all the IP table rules and all. it uses. And next, this is what I told, service types. There are like 4 major type of services: cluster IP. This is default we use, and node port, and the load balancer, and external name. Okay, cluster IP is what we use when when we deploy multiple applications, like in auto scaling. We have like 4 or 5 servers, 5 pods running for auto scaling purpose. So then what we define is the cluster IP. So the Kubernetes itself, it manages internally, and whenever the request comes to that, it will route all the requests to the whichever how many our pods are available to it. If at all there are 2 or 3 pods running, so the cluster, when we use the cluster service name, the service name will route internally to the cluster IP, and it will route all the requests to the 4 running pods. If at all this is called node port, directly exposing the node port, like how we expose Docker ports. We want to test internally. So we can, with this, we can directly call the IP of the IP of the pod, and using the port which we expose, we can directly call the application using this particular node port. Example, I'll show you. Okay. It is not there. Okay. So if at all, here we are this service file, 1 minute. Here. So when we defining a service, we normally what we do is we define like it's a type of node port or cluster IP or load balancer. We specify here. So using this node port, I can directly communicate to the pod using this particular port instead of going through load balancer and everything. We use this, but it is not recommended in productions. It's only for the development, testing and purpose we use node ports, and for in high available environments everything we normally use with the cluster IP. The same way the load balancer and the external names. I'll show you one ingress. So here we are using, this is one example I'm showing you. Here I am using Nginx ingress controller, and here we externally we are publishing the host and configuring it, and backend it's configured to the service name and service port. Here you can see this is the ingress file, and here is the service name. We are doing everything to service name and service port. We are not using any IPs or anything. So I'll explain in more about the ingress controllers when we come to the deployment of ingress controllers and everything in the next, probably in the next session. Yeah, here is a detailed explanation of each and every like cluster IPs, what is just expose on internal IP, and the node port service, the load balancer service, and the external name CNAME which we are doing in the ingress, and the path-based routing. Here you can see this is called the routing. So whenever request comes to this particular host, so it will verify like to which it need to path. This path is only slash, and it need to go to this particular service using this port. So if at all we have any like any other paths, like sub example like index.html or index.php, whatever it is, we can define those paths. So we can also do like based on the paths we can do the routings. And coming to the volumes, Same like in a same like in a Docker, even Kubernetes has like storage, because the containers are immutable. So whenever the pod gets shut down, so all the data is lost. If at all we are running any database, example is like MySQL database. If you are running without any storage, any mapped volume, so you save any data. If at all, if you don't save it in any external storage, so once the pod crashes or shuts down, so everything, all the data is deleted. So for this purpose, Kubernetes have like to solve all these problems. Kubernetes have called volumes. So there are basically in volumes there are like three components. One is the persistence volume, and the persistent volume claims, and a storage class. So what is persistence volume? Persistence volume is nothing like just like a node, worker node is like a resource, compute resource, and the persistence volume is just like a storage resource. So it's just like a resource it uses, like how we use the worker node and all. It's just like same resource. And the persistence volumes, like they're independent of the life cycle. So whenever the pod goes down or the pod crashes, nothing, all the data is maintained in the volume and they are not erased. And these are the like provided by the administrators, which the simple things they include. It is like system size and identifier like labels or volume IDs, name, everything. All these will be mentioned in there. I'll show you like how the YAML file of the persistence volume. So like if at all persistent volume need to be used by a pod, so it cannot directly use. It should be requested by the persistent volume claim from the pod. So using persistent volume claim, the pod is used by the persistent volume is used by the pod. So what is persistent volume claim? It's just persistent volume, nothing but it's only a request for a storage. So it can include like type amount of storage and the type of access, either it's read only or write only, or whether it need to be retained or destroyed during those things. Everything it is mentioned. And the storage class, it's it's defined like defined to define persistent volumes, like the performance, size, or access parameters. And so there are like many like with high volumes, high speed storage classes with SSDs, or normal low speed average storage classes, um, or the standard storage classes. So normally persistence, like the life cycle of the persistent volume is it's where it's just a request. PVC is a request for the persistent volume, and it's the interaction between persistent volume and persistent volume claim. It follows a distinct life cycle, like starting with provisioning, binding, using, and reclaiming. So this is the just the life cycle. Like first, it's like provisioning, then the binding to the volume, then using it, and reclaiming if at all we reuse it or destroy it. So coming to provisioning. So first part of the life cycle is provisioning. So there are like two types of provisioning. One is static provisioning, and one is the dynamic. So static is like we create the persistence volumes, and we define in the YAML, and make it available to the pod for it to claim through the persistence volume claim. And the dynamic is like the PVC, like it just requires, and the persistent volumes is dynamically created. I'll show you the examples for that. Okay, so if you see here, okay. If you see this is the in this example, I am only using persistent volume claim. I'm not using any persistent volume option. I'm not defining anything. I'm just only defining the persistent volume claim. So when I deploy this, so this is how we normally apply or deploy the files to the Kubernetes. So when I deploy it, so here you can see persistent volume claim has been created. Okay, so now when you type get PV, so this is auto-generated. I'm not defining any persistent volume for this. So this has been automatic generated. So if you see claim, here we just define the PV claim. So this is the one we used, the metadata name MySQL PV claim, and the storage size is 1 GB, and the access mode is read write once. Okay, if you see here, see here. So access mode read write once, capacity 1 GB, storage class is standard, and status is bound. And if you go to the persistence volume, here, okay, so it is default created by the volume claim. Now, we did not define anything. If you come to other examples, I'll show you. This is another example I'm showing. Here using for external. So for example, as an example I'm explaining here. Here we are defining the persistence volume. Here it is EFS by AWS, provided by AWS. So we are using that EFS and mounting here. So we have defined the persistence volume, and for the persistence volume claim, we are defining it to use that. Same here. Here the storage class for the EFS is EFS. The name we are defining it here, and the class is standard, and the drivers we are mentioning here, and this is the file mount of provided by the AWS. The name. Example, if you take NFS, we'll be having a like IP colon mount path. The same way, this is by the AWS EFS. So if you see, it is etc dev, we have created the volume. It's a persistent volume which we have specified created, and the reclaim policy is retain. And if you see in our example, we did not say retain, it's delete. Reclaim policy is exam. That means whenever if I delete this deployment, if at all I delete this file, so there is nothing. So when if the reclaim policy is delete, it will not maintain this persistent volume, and it will remove once we delete it. And in this case, the reclaim policy is retained. If at all we delete this deployment and everything, still this volume will be saved, and it will be available to remap. Yeah, and the next one, excuse me. That is of like provisioning of persistent volumes, both static and dynamic. And the binding is the same. So when we request, when the PVC request is created, so if at all static, then it will verify for the available persistent volume and creates does the request, and so so it is in the static binding. So when the static binding, it's like it will try to find the matching persistent volume and then binds it to the volume claim. So here what happens is, excuse me. So here, here manually we have created the persistent volume, and there we have executed the claim. So here you can see this is the claim name which we have used here, ATCEFS claim. So what happens in the static binding is, so it will look for the matching volume and then does the claim and creates it. Okay. Here also you can see the claim is done by so and so particular claim. Here in the claim you can easily view it, and the storage class, and that and dynamic is like if in the dynamic binding, what happens is when we do a volume claim, it will try to create a PV and tries to bind it. The example which we have done for this MySQL. So here, what it done is the claim has created a persistent volume and created the bond binding. So that is static and dynamic binding, the same way like provisioning. And using is same like the cluster. Whenever we initiate the binding, so it will verify. It will verify the. It will try to find the bond volumes and mounts that particular volume to the this PVC. So when we are using volumes, that supports multiple access modes and all, we can specify in the file like access modes, read write many or read write once. All those things we can specify in the access modes specifications. And the reclaim policies. And the reclaim policy is like, it will tell the cluster like whether when the claim is released, whether we need to, retain that persistent volume, or they need to be deleted, or that can be recycled and reused. So that is what here we say, like, reclaim policy delete means whenever we delete the volume claim, so it gets automatically deleted. And if the reclaim policy is retained, so whenever we delete the volume claim, so the volume is still saved and it's not deleted. So that is the life cycle of the volumes. And there are like many types of persistent volumes are available based on those things. Example, I showed you this AWS EFS, which is being provided by AWS. Like this, they have like with Google, Azure, and we have like if at all we are using any bare metal services, we can use like NFS, or we have any dedicated channels like network storage, where we can mount it to multiple servers. Those also we can be used. So there are many different types of volumes available, which can be used while deploying to the Kubernetes. So this is what for today's about the volumes and the installation of the Kubernetes. And yes, so if at all any doubts, please.
Very nice session, Ram. I really enjoyed it. This is a lot of knowledge. Even myself, I learned. I'm happy to, be part of this and hear from you. And also thanks a lot, Kavita, for your consistent support, for supporting us. This is really great. Any questions from anyone?
Yes, I have a question. Hi.
All right. No, so you know what? It's actually good. There is a question.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Greg, do you
So,
have a question?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, Craig, tell me.
Okay.
Right.
How do you differentiate between the master and the worker node? I know in the beginning you ran same command on both master and worker. So how do you differentiate them?
Yeah. So if you see, you can see the roles here, right? When you, one second. So when you do the nodes, kubectl get nodes, here it is the roles. So this is the name, and here the role is like control plane master. The others, it is not defined. We can differentiate nodes. I'll show you like multi-node. So it's another, here you can see, this one is having like, around 7 worker nodes and 1 master we have. You can see the role. This role defines like this is the master and others are nodes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, any other question?
No, I think thanks a lot, Ram. Friday, I think Saturday evening for you. I'll let you to, I will give you back 10 minutes of your time to spend with your family. Thanks a lot. And please, as usual, send me this week and next week topics so I can kind of pass it along to the active attendees. So you're good to go. Thanks, Ram.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks
Kavita.
everybody.
Thanks, Ram. Thanks, everyone. Great
Bye.
session.
Bye.